Hello. By the way of the presentation, we did or I did yesterday on Matthew Nowicki, the Polish architect who began work at Chandigarh and unfortunately was killed in a terrible plane accident. He was returning from Chandigarh to the United States, and the plane crashed in Egypt, and he died at 40. So let's look now at the works of Le Corbusier in Chandigarh. What he did after Nowicki, uh, as I said, unfortunately died. But what happened in Chandigarh must also be considered in the light of the meeting between Le Corbusier and this great political leader, because building a building, especially a governmental building, an important complex of buildings, this is an enormous task. And in the absence of the political force, of the political sustainers of the project could not become so-called reality. Le Corbusier had a chance to be admired by Nehru, and who was the political leader of India and visionary himself. This was the man, and we can only salute him and have affection for him. He was a great political leader, but he was also a visionary in the sense that he valued modern art, he valued Le Corbusier, he valued modern architecture, and this is how Chandigarh, as we know it today, was born. Bravo to Nehru, and also bravo to Le Corbusier, and his cousin Pierre Jeanneret was also involved, and also bravo to, I don't know exactly what Nowicki did before the arrival of Le Corbusier. I don't know if he already started working on Chandigarh, but it is mentioned that he was the chief architect of this complex before he died in at 40. Maybe he didn't advance too much. Maybe he didn't do much work, but he was already chosen the chief architect in Chandigarh. The plane tragedy killed him, and Le Corbusier stepped in, or he was asked to step in. The Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Le Corbusier in a picture. Here they are, and you see from the intensity of the Prime Minister of India that he was indeed a serious man, a thinker, a visionary. And I like this picture very much because you have on the left hand, the rebellious architect already at a certain age, and you have on the right a great political leader, and together they they uh, they created that force without which important buildings cannot easily come into being. Bravo to both. Le Corbusier benefited from affection from other political leaders like Claudius Petit in France. Without Claudius Petit, who was at one point, I don't know, the Minister of Reconstruction in France, and then he became mayor of Firminy-Vert. And because of that, Firminy-Vert has 4 buildings by Le Corbusier, though it's a small town, a small city. Again, you see the importance of an auspicious meeting between the political man and the architectural author or artist. When I say man, I mean human being. Uh, in Firminy-Vert, there is the famous church which was built after Le Corbusier died, Saint-Pierre de Firminy-Vert. Then there is a unité d'habitation. Then there is a stadium, and then there is a kind of a cultural center, center of culture, all 4 built by Le Corbusier. And this happened thanks to the generosity and the vision and the openness, the understanding of the political force. In that case, Claudius Petit. Here they are again, Nehru on the left and the architect, Le Corbusier. And again, you know, this is important to know. The architect has a vision. The architect is the poet. The architect conceives the project, but in the absence of the political man or the person who activates everything from the base, from the political base, the building could remain just a project. Le Corbusier actually called the political people, the politicians, les agents, les forces agissantes de la société, the forces that activate matters in society, in life. And I believe he was correct. So maybe we as architects should reflect on the relationship between the political forces, the political men and women, and the architect. Here they are again. Nehru, obviously thinking about Le Corbusier was saying, and the architect, of course, trying to, you know, persuade him to do certain things. Here they are again. Nehru on the right, Le Corbusier on the left. I think they sympathized with each other. I think they had affection for each other. And let's only hope we can stir up the imagination and the affection of some politicians too. And then we can build, although if we build, maybe nature will be more saddened because we have already too many buildings. Anyway, here they are again. Here is actually Nehru contemplating or looking at the palace of the governor in Chandigarh, which was actually not built. And here you can see also Pierre Jeanneret, the cousin of Le Corbusier. And yes, of course, here is Nehru, and here is the model of the palace of the governor, which again was not built. This is the plan done in the office of Le Corbusier, and we have the Secretariat. Here you have the assembly hall, the great decisions, collective decisions were taken. Here is the Palace of Justice. Here is the mysterious structure called the House of Shadows. And I always ask myself, why would Le Corbusier build a House of Shadows in front of the most important political building or in that region of India? You know, and here was supposed to be the palace of the governor, but it was not built. This is the original drawing of Le Corbusier. We recognize also the Le Corbusier's font. By the way, of Le Corbusier's font, I worked in an architecture office in New York City, which was using Le Corbusier's font, but they were not using Le Corbusier's genius in making architecture. And I found it rather depressing that, rather banal buildings employ the fonts of Le Corbusier without having the greatness of Le Corbusier, of course. And it's, we can use the font, of course. We can use even the paradigmatic little, Le Corbusier little man, in our projects. But we have to animate our work not with some accessories borrowed from Le Corbusier, graphic or otherwise, but with the spirit of his creativity. Anyway, this is the site plan, which was also based on the drawings of Le Corbusier. And here is in miniature almost, the whole ensemble of buildings that Le Corbusier built. Here he is we're talking about the Le Corbusier, the little man, the silhouette, that everybody knows belongs to Le Corbusier, the heroic man, because we actually talked about heroism in architecture, and that silhouette represents, you know, it's a Promethean human silhouette, you know, projected here against the sky. But how to be heroic and at the same time modest is still a question worth addressing. In fact, a very important question, in my opinion. Again, this is the site plan with four buildings that were built. That is the Secretariat, the Assembly Hall, the House of Shadows, and on the right, the Palace of Justice. As I said, the building for the governor, the Palace of the Governor, we saw Leroux contemplating the model of the building, but it was never built. Anyway, this is the model of what was drawn in the site plan. Again, the Secretariat is here. This is the Parliament Assembly Hall, the main building in a way in the whole complex here. Here is the Palace of Justice. Here was supposed to be the Palace of the Governor, and then some symbolic structures here, which, you know, the most visible in a way is the House of Shadows, which we are going to look at. Now, sorry, this is written in Romania, the building of the Parliament, Clădirea Parlamentului. Here it is. It's a well-known building. It's a building clearly destined, I mean, you know, conceived for, you know, the most important collective political decisions taken there. There is a longing for some kind of a vertical dialogue with Cosmos, even, because what's happening on the roof, and you see in the section, is you know, this main room of the Parliament as an élan vital towards the above. And there is a sketch of Le Corbusier, I don't know if I have it here, where he talks about the celebration of the sun and the moon. So again, he was thinking in terms of the earth, but also in cosmical terms, if this doesn't sound too emphatic or too rhetorical. But I think, especially in such programs charged with symbolism and charged with the collectivity spirit that without which society cannot be, human society cannot be, perhaps considering a dialogue between the work and not just the environment, but cosmos itself, because as Buckminster Fuller said, the environment is everything that is outside of us without us. That is the environment. But cosmos is everything outside of us plus us, including us. This is why I think the cosmic should be addressed. But how to address it with reverence and modesty is not easy. This building is notorious. It used a lot of concrete. So again, this is the building of the Parliament in Chandigarh. It has force. It has clearly heroic qualities. At that time, you know, people didn't consider the high level of pollution that concrete provokes. But it's still a very, you know, impressive building. And I even thought of organizing a journey, you know, a trip to Chandigarh to see these buildings built by Le Corbusier in India. They also built in Ahmedabad, not just here. But these are quintessential buildings by Le Corbusier Le Grand, if I am to call him as the title of very big and very heavy book published by Phaidon is the interior of that room with cosmic aspirations, the assembly hall. And it would be interesting actually to compare the works done by Le Corbusier in Chandigarh with the works done by Louis Kahn in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. How do you explain that in India, in Chandigarh, Le Corbusier built buildings that transcend in terms of importance and significance and symbolism and dimensions almost any building that he did in France. France didn't commission their own architect. Okay, he was Swiss, but he lived and worked in France. The way India commissioned him. And it's the same with Louis Kahn. Louis Kahn built some buildings in the United States, important buildings, but he was not commissioned by the North American government to build the way he was commissioned to build in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. And I'm not even sure if he was commissioned in the sense that he was paid. It might be that he was not paid in Bangladesh. And it's, I say what I say because I read something pointing in this direction, and I don't even know if Le Corbusier himself was paid. Maybe he was, and it's actually irrelevant. But the works of Le Corbusier and Louis Kahn in Chandigarh and in Dhaka are very important works in the field of modern architecture, and should be considered from many points of view. It's a work that exalts the human spirit. I know there are critics. I know that there are people who say, wait a minute, what does this have to do with India? I think it does. It does exactly because that cosmic dialogue with cosmos, because of its, transcendental ambition, if you want. Because we can talk about transcendence here. So there is, I think, much to learn from this building in Chandigarh, even if, of course, there will always be critics. But I think at a time of maybe capitalistic flamboyance or an excessive optimism, and I could almost express myself oxymoronically, an exasperating optimism, if there is such a thing. Of course, it's oxymoronic vis-a-vis technology. Here we have a different kind of existential engagement with what we call reality. It is heroical, but is not animated by capitalistic ideology, and is not animated by the fetishization of technology. It's rather primitive in a way, and it's at the same time it's highly complex and sophisticated. Look at that concrete. It's not afraid of dirt, so to speak, of the darkness that the concrete receives in its dialogue with the elements. No, it's a heroic architecture, but it is heroic because life itself requires some heroic stance, because life is difficult for all of us. It doesn't matter, tall or short, or rich or poor. It is difficult for all of us. And so this building, yes, was built in Chandigarh. Yes, it was built in India, but it speaks about the human condition in general. And it moves me also, this picture where you have these people, deciding for their society. And when you contemplate the tragic war in Ukraine, you wonder, why is it that so many wise men couldn't avoid this terrible war, as they couldn't avoid other terrible wars? Why? Maybe because they forgot the vertical dialogue, you know, the dialogue with the cosmos. Although, of course, Putin depicts himself as being a Christian, and he has no problem to depict himself, bare-breasted with a cross on his chest and with a rifle in his hands. It's a picture which totally infuriates me. How could this be? How could you wear a cross and at the same time have a rifle in your hands? How could this be? Can you imagine Jesus like this with a rifle in his hands? This only shows the incredible falsity, the incredible untruth that these people externalize fatally, and many people die because of them. What kind of a leader this is? I have no respect at all. How could you have a respect for someone who has the I would say the impertinence, the unfeeling of wearing a cross around his neck, and at the same time have a rifle in his arms or in his hands? Unacceptable. And the Russians who claim that they are believers, they have faith, and I believe they do actually, they follow such a leader. It is incomprehensible to me, because the falsity of the statement is for all to see. If you wear that cross and you believe in the cross and you believe in the religion, the spirituality that you assume it's yours, you cannot depict yourself with a rifle in your hands. You just can't. Anyway, back to Chandigarh and its cosmic aspirations, which are noble, but unfortunately, well, this is something else. It's a monument, and he actually built it. This hand, we were just talking about the hand snow. Well, this was a monument that Le Corbusier built at Chandigarh, and I hope I have pictures with it. I also like the modesty of the landscape around the building. Some people might say it's unstudied somehow, but I actually prefer this to what was done in Dhaka, well, after the death of Louis Kahn. There, I think, is a little bit too much emphasis on the landscape, but here, it's nature is not asserting herself or itself or herself, maybe sufficiently, but the building says something that is not sentimental, is not pastoral, is not trying to express unsustainable ideals. So maybe in that sense, the landscape around the buildings in Chandigarh are okay. I also like the fact, the robust chromatic qualities of the main room, animated by the modern spirit. It is modern art, and the colors chosen are would perplex a little bit the bourgeois or the conventional mind. You see here on the right the parliament building, and here on the left the secretariat, where the many people worked in order to make this political complex of buildings achieve its goals. Here we see on the left that mysterious house of shadows, which I keep asking myself, why did he build it in front of the parliament building? From what I read, it seems that at that time Yanis Xenakis was already working in the office of Le Corbusier, and he had some interest in astronomy. But it's still mysterious. Why would Le Corbusier build a structure to study, the shadows resulting from the dialogue between this concrete structure and the rays of the sun, right here in front of the most important political building of Chandigarh. I am tempted to consider it a sacred building somehow. Yes, it's not about God as we think we know him. It's not about a god or a goddess. It's not explicitly about spirit or religion, but it is about shadows, and the shadow is almost in itself has some kind of transcendence, and it's of course it's the opposite of. I mean, it represents darkness. No, it's in opposition to light. It's still to me a little bit intriguing and mysterious why Le Corbusier would build the house of shadows, if he calls it, right here, in front of the Parliament building. But if we look at the facade of the Parliament building, we see this large-scale artwork which was done by Le Corbusier. Again, Le Corbusier was not just building with concrete; he was also an artist. He manifested himself not just through painting and sculpture, but also through tapestries. And this should also make us reconsider our relationship with art. This is the hand that we saw the sketch of, which was built. And it's quite monumental, as you see. And yes, it is an homage addressed to this most important part of our body. The Secretariat building, here it is, with some bureaucrat moving towards it, and another one hidden moving away from it. Interesting picture if you think about it. But the building is good. It's good. It's an office building, practically. It's horizontal, but it has force. And at the same time, it's not challenging the Parliament building. This is the plan. Sorry, the picture is not very clear. But you can still see it. Yes, there are offices. There is a circulation in the center. Then there is the dramatism or the drama of the ramps and the stairs. And there is some drama of the brise-soleil system that he used. It's a citadel of bureaucracy, but bureaucrats apparently are unavoidable in human society. They were unavoidable in Egypt, in the ancient Egypt. They were actually, important presences in the hierarchy of the ancient Egyptian society. So here they are present too. They are needed by society, but they are needed only to the extent they don't overextend themselves, because bureaucracy could indeed be deadly, as everybody knows. Let's hope in Chandigarh it was not, and it is not, and it will not be deadly. The Secretariat building by Le Corbusier, and then the roof, where we see some reiterations of what he did at l'unité d'habitation, for example, where things happen on the terrace jardin. Is this a terrace jardin? There is some green there, but otherwise it's a sculptural environment there at the top of the building. There are Indians who relax there, and I have some pictures. I don't know if in this presentation, with some bureaucrats, taking a rest right there at the top of the building. Here they are, with the shoes taken off, and maybe even meditating. And I like this very much. It's not what we would usually think about. The citadel of bureaucracy, or the building of a large building serving bureaucracy. But they are humans like everybody else, and you know, they need a rest, they need to contemplate, they need to meditate. Anyway, the ramps, the building in its, large dimensions. And maybe, you know, the public, who knows, the public, or, some people working here, even, I don't know. But it moves me again, you know, this architecture, which some critics say is not appropriate for India. I'm not sure. It was about promoting a rebirth of the country, you know, promoting new ideas, new architecture. And in that sense, I think what they did here is not to be dismissed. You see here in the site plan what we already discussed, but besides or beyond what I said, you see where the open hand is. It's here. And the palace of the governor was supposed here, and this is the parliament building, and this is the secretariat, and this is the palace of justice, or the high court, as it is called here. So assembly, secretariat, high court. Well, actually, this arrow is wrong here. The governor's palace is here, not here. Anyway, it was not built, and the open hand somewhere here. The Secretariat again. Maybe we need some heroism also in bureaucracy. And I remember a beautiful, beautiful film by Akira Kurosawa, the great Japanese filmmaker, who in 1950s made a very moving film called Akiru, to live, or Ikiru, to live, which means to live. And it's about a bureaucrat who, through a set of circumstances, arrives at contemplating his death, untimely death, and he changes completely from being a stubborn, even cynic maybe, or indifferent bureaucrat. He changes into a man who understands the value of life. This man who kept postponing some people to work for them, who they were searching to build a small little park for children, and he continuously dismissed them. He didn't give them the necessary signature. There was a tall tower of paperwork on his desk. He was the monstrous bureaucrat, but he learns that he would die in a very short time because he had cancer, stomach cancer, and this changes his life. All of a sudden, this man understood what he didn't understand all those years when he was just a stubborn bureaucrat. He understands that life is precious, that we should have empathy and sympathy and love for each other, that we should not forget our dreams. For example, he had a dream, or he had a desire to buy a hat for himself, but because he was very stingy and he was accumulating money, his salaries in the bank, he never bought it. Well, now when he learned that he would die very soon, he bought the hat. Then he goes and in a bar and gets drunk, and then meets an artist or someone with an artistic temperament who brings him to a dancing club, if I remember. And he even allows him, the expression of his affection for a younger woman in his office to come forward. And he buys her, something, and they begin some kind of a friendship, but you can tell he was affectionate towards her. In other words, he began to be human. He began to be, warm, and the movie ends beautifully by him singing in a I don't know how you call it, in a swing, that he built. Finally, he built that park, that little park that some poor people in Tokyo perhaps fought so hard to be allowed to build. He himself dies actually in that swing that with his signature and his approvals finally was built. A very, very moving building because Ikiru, to live. What does it mean to live? To accumulate riches, to be inhuman towards other human beings, to wage wars, to forget that life is precious and is short for every one of us. And if we are confronted with the limit of life, with the prospect of an imminent death, I think we can learn finally to live. It's a beautiful film, and I'm most surely, or almost surely, I didn't do justice to it in my description of the movie. Please try to see it. It might change your life. Ikiru, Akira Kurosawa, 1950 something, a black and white movie that moves you. Anyway, back to the Secretariat by Le Corbusier and some bureaucrat or someone on a bicycle moving away from the Secretariat. Now, the Palace of Justice. The Palace of Justice, actually, this is from the Parliament building. This picture should have been shown when I show the Parliament. You see here better the artwork by Le Corbusier, ample as it is, in its dialogue with the plastically, externalized concrete works. This is the interior of the Palace of Justice. Le Corbusier promoted courageous chromatics, as we can see here. Why should justice be morose? Why can't it be celebratory, like it is here through these primary colors? And look at this. It's actually, the more I look at these buildings, the more I want to travel to Chandigarh. The mirage, the miracle, the excitement, the exuberance, the thoughtfulness of architecture become apparent when you contemplate highly creative works of architecture. And they do not show up when you contemplate lesser works. But in the works of an architect who gave everything he had for architecture, they become transparent, they become visible. What is justice? We cannot live without justice, and unfortunately, there is a lot of injustice in the world. So architecture, in my opinion, can and should promote justice, particularly in a palace of justice. I'm not so sure about the word palace. Maybe, could be called differently, but because the word palace and what it means refers to some privilege. But I know that's how it is called, and in various languages, the palace of justice. But maybe justice does deserve, to be honored with a palace. Justice, not the human beings working in the palace of justice, but justice itself. Great chromatics, I mean, this is the justice of beauty in a way, which exalts the spirit. We need this exaltation because in its absence, it's possible that we remain some morose, servants of injustice. Wasn't it Brinkush who said that beauty is the absolute equity, or in a way, the absolute justice? Now, we look at the paperwork on the right side of this picture, and that bureaucrat may be thinking about what to do with that with that, you know, paperwork, which is dismissed in that, you know, in this very so-called unprofessional way. It's an amusing picture in a way. You'll never see something like this, you know, an official, no, an official sleeping or meditating or thinking or taking a rest with his feet on another chair turned around, and then not far away from him some boxes and papers, maybe boxes with papers thrown that way. This shows the difference between India and, let's say, many countries of the world, particularly in the West. But I have admiration for this aspect of Indian culture, even if you could say it's a tragedy, because you know, we are supposed to archive scientifically, and we are supposed to keep everything, and we are supposed to be this and that and this and that. Anyway, color, concrete, brise-soleil, sculpturalness, vigor, the impetus that comes from vision. I don't know who these people are. Maybe some, well, most surely some officials. Well, there is a reason why I put this picture here, but now I forgot it. Again, the Palace of Justice, Chandigarh, Chandigarh, Chandigarh in the sunset, probably. Yeah, we have to go to Chandigarh, and we have to watch Ikiru by Akira Kurosawa. Now, the House of Shadows, I mentioned this mysterious structure, which I still don't quite understand why Le Corbusier built it. I am happy he built it. And when I make presentations about the so-called sacred works of Le Corbusier, I mentioned the House of Shadows too, although it's not really a sacred, but it's rather mysterious. Again, why would he build a house, the House of Shadows, in front of the Parliament building? Anyway, this is a page with, you know, describing the, you know, the works done at Chandigarh. You see here, it's called the Tower of Shadows. It's actually not a tower. Its horizontal dimension is a little bit bigger than the vertical one, and normally shouldn't be called a tower, but that's how it is called here. But we see here a few other things which very often are not presented in relation with Chandigarh. You know, the Martyrs Memorial, moving towards the assembly. From the open hand, one finds the monument, a memorial to the martyrs of the partition to the right. You have to know the history of this place and people in order to know what this is about. And the geometric hill, this was created from the enormous quantities of sand dug out to create some of the buildings of the complex. The 24 solar hours, or the sun's apparent journey on the sky, which obsessed Le Corbusier, are inscribed on the 45 meters wide inclined face of the hill. Interesting. And the open hand monument, around 80 feet high, so almost 30 meters high, stands tall between the assembly on the left side and the High Court, or the Palace of Justice, on the right. The open hand is the city's official emblem, describing the ideology of the city: open to give, open to receive. The generosity of the hand. This is the drawing done for the House of Shadows. And you see it here. It's here, the House of Shadows. But this was not built, actually, as far as I know, a ramp going to the top. This is the building, and I like it very much because it doesn't have an explicit function. It has a rather esoteric function. What is this, the House of Shadows? This is not a place, you know, in front of the Parliament building to do some, you know, research on how the shadows are, you know, touching the ground at a certain particular moment of the movement of the sun on the sky. Very strange. This is that, you know, the 24 hours, the journey of the sun, on the apparent journey of, because we know the Earth actually rotates around the sun and not the other way around. But Le Corbusier was very, very interested, if not obsessed, by these dualities. You know, morning, the sun rises, you have midday, then the sun goes down, you have the sunset, then the sun goes under, so to speak, only to re-emerge the next day for a new beginning. It's about the, you know, the rhythms of life. And here you see the House of Shadows. And again, it's the most you know, surprising architectonic presence here. This is the Martyrs Memorial that was built here, but I don't know exactly where in the plan it was built. The Martyrs Memorial is sited on the side of the esplanade between the Assembly Hall and the High Court, during an actual interest to the Museum of Knowledge, which was not built, but there was an exhibition, a competition launched for the Museum of Knowledge a few years ago, and I took part myself, and you will see my work just a few minutes from now. And the monument to the 24 solar hours on the opposite side, which you saw. This is a memorial to the martyrs of Punjab, that area of that state, that area of India, partition. I don't know, unfortunately, and I apologize, the history of the place, and consists of a square enclosure with one side elongated into a ramp by which one mounts the enclosing wall. Problematic English. Within the enclosure are to be symbolic figures of a prone man, a snake, and a lion set amid ruins. The concrete ramp permits one to see from above the Capitol in its entirety, and create a promenade rising and descending. As we know from Kenneth Frampton, the promenade, a very important architectural device in the work of Kenneth Frampton. And we see the swastika, which in India has a totally different meaning than it had for the Nazis, the fascists. The Tower of Shadows is not really a tower, but I don't know why it is called so here. Designed to study the solar movement, this building served Le Corbusier to support his thesis that it is possible to control the sunlight in the four corners of a building, play with it even in a hot country, and finally obtain low temperatures. But why would he build it in the political administrative center of the country? It's unbelievable, you know. I mean, this was not a research area. I am tempted to think that it's more of a transcendental nature that this building house is coming into being. But maybe Le Corbusier would have denied this, but I'm tempted to think that there are other forces at play here that made this building be built. Just beyond the solar monument is the Tower of Shadows, a demonstration of Le Corbusier's theories of sun control, consisting of a series of platforms oriented to the cardinal points and containing sun breakers on those sides, except north. This concrete structure is a culmination of the depth studies of Le Corbusier on the path of the sun and ways to control the penetration in the built space. But why there? I think the true reason is not this one. Anyway, who knows? Maybe Le Corbusier himself would have advocated this, astronomic functionalism. But this is the building, and I like it as a building, even if I don't care about, I don't know what research on the moving shadows. It's just a carcass, actually, it's a carcass of a building. It's not really a building, but exactly because of this escapes human determinism and human will. This one we saw. We saw this one, the hand, again, the House of Shadows, the House of, no, this is, yes, the House of Shadows, the High Court or the Palace of Justice. And here is again the House of Shadows, this most mysterious building in this complex of buildings. In the back there on the left, we see the Palace of Justice. Again, the House of Shadows. I even saw pictures with a cow inside. I don't know if I have it here. Now the open hand monument, which already we saw a picture or two and we read a little bit. This is the sketch of Le Corbusier. So it's almost 30 meters tall, and it symbolizes, you know, the act, the generosity of giving and the generosity even of receiving, because there is an interplay, a dialectical relationship between giving and receiving. Here it is. Do we need a symbolic architecture? Yes, we do. But unfortunately, a lot of time our architecture is not symbolic at all. It's not easy to create a profound symbolic architecture. But in order to create a symbolic architecture, you have to contemplate at least the, you know, the otherness of contemplation, or the otherness of this of the spiritual life, the unseen in a way, you know, to understand that not everything that is seen and touchable and concrete is representing fully the whole spectrum of reality. Symbol is also important. That is another plane of existence. And that other plane of existence, which has to do with spirit, with metaphor, with transcendence, very often now we neglect. But not Le Corbusier. He didn't neglect it. And by the way, Le Corbusier apparently had even very deep knowledge about alchemy. He was interested in alchemy, and his Le Poème de l'angle droit, his poem of the right angle, is apparently an esoteric work relating the involvement that Le Corbusier had with alchemy, something that I learned, in astonishment not too long ago. Anyway, the open hand by Le Corbusier in Chandigarh, here it is. And, you know, some young people playing soccer in front of the generous open hand. Why not? Good for them. And I'm sure the open hand enjoyed watching the game. Now, the Museum of Knowledge in Chandigarh, as I told you, it was a competition launched by, an institute. I don't know, some people in India who launch competitions, and a very interesting competition. And I took part, and I will tell you the story because it was a very interesting story for me. I didn't know what to do, how to design a museum of knowledge in Chandigarh, in the proximity of the other works built by Le Corbusier. Not easy at all. So I didn't know what to do. I had a collaborator, very talented architect in Alexandria in Egypt, Shahira Hamad, and we wanted to do the competition, but we didn't know what to do. So one day, this was, I don't know, about 6 years ago, I went to buy some food in Bucharest, and on my way towards the store, I saw an object near a tree on the sidewalk that was discarded, maybe from a demolition, or I don't know, a little object like 20 centimeters long, 22 centimeters long, something like this. This was the object, exactly as I found it. And I liked it for some reason. And I said to myself, after I buy food, when I return home, maybe it's still there. I'll pick it up and I'll take it home. And yes, when I came back, it was still there. Of course, nobody would pick it up. Why would they, right? I went with it to my little studio. I put it on the table, actually on a small drafting board, and I kept looking at it. It attracted my attention. I liked it. And at one moment I said, this is the Museum of Knowledge. And I told Shahira, Shahira, I think we have the answer, how to make the Museum of Knowledge. Let's transform this objet trouvé, this found object, into an architectural project. So she began to work with Maya. I do not know Maya, to make it an active project for this competition, for a Museum of Knowledge. Starting from what I found on the sidewalk, going to buy something to eat. And here are a few other pictures of the object. I already decided that we have to to somehow transform this thing, I don't know how to call it otherwise, that I found into a museum. And we see it now on the site plan with the buildings by Le Corbusier. We already know, here is the Secretariat, here is the Parliament, here is the House of Shadows. Here was supposed to be the governor's palace, but was not built. And here it is the Palace of Justice or High Court. And the Museum of Knowledge, which apparently was intended to be built there, and it was not built, the one that we proposed is here. This was the site where we were to make the proposal. With the object I found on the sidewalk in Bucharest, going to buy some cold cuts. And now you see some drawings that Shahira did. Not an easy job, because I sent her the photographs and she began to transform the photographs by looking at them into an active project through Maya. This is the elevation of the building, based on the photograph I took of it. The back elevation of the building, the Museum of Knowledge, and a little bit later on, I will read the text that I wrote about this particular, let's call it the Museum of Knowledge. Here we see another visualization, graphic visualization that Shahira did with the plan and the 3 elevations. And other works that she continued to develop and refine, what we already, had in the found object. And here you see some, still screens of her working with Maya on the Museum of Knowledge. I regret I didn't know Maya, so Shahira did all these works, and yes, we had to send the project. I don't even know if it arrived by the deadline, because we didn't receive any acknowledgement. It was sent digitally. This was one poster with a project that we sent with a text that explained what we intended to do, and on the right, the other representations that were needed. And this was the second poster, or with a project, with a picture with the users of the building, two yogis there that I thought they shouldn't be forgotten, of course, when we talk about knowledge. And other images of her working through Maya to try to bring some reality in this process of making a Museum of Knowledge out of a found piece on a sidewalk in Bucharest. Anyway, I'll read you also the short text that I wrote, which I think is still expressing what I thought and what actually both of us thought about what knowledge is or could be. The project could have been developed further, but this was what she was able to do in the time frame that we had at our disposal. Again, this was not done, with Photoshop. This was an active project in Maya, which could have been further developed. I was not happy with this part here. It's too rigid. It should have had some, deformations and maybe some ivy, some plants climbing on it, more freedom. But this is what she was able to do, so I shouldn't comment in any way, critically, because she did actually very good work in a very short time. So let's read, if you don't mind. I will read what I wrote when working on this project together with Shakira Hamad. What is knowledge? An aspiration, a struggle, a continuous process, a longing, a moving upwards, a moving downwards, a delusion, a hope, a disappointment, a line on the forehead, a sin, a vanity, a pure song, a flying high, a sinking into despair, a nirvana. How should the Museum of Knowledge be like? Should it be a box containing the so-called truth, the so-called knowledge? Maybe Socrates was right at the end of his life when he said, I only know one thing, that I don't know anything. And the Rig Veda, the sacred Indian text, seems to say the same thing. And I read from it, from the hymn of non-eternity, Nasadiya Sukta. Who really knows? Who can here proclaim it? Whence this creation sprang? Gods came later, after the creation of this universe. Who then knows whence it has arisen? Whether gods will created it, or whether he was mute? Only he who is its overseer in highest heaven knows. He only knows, or perhaps he does not know. Beautiful, beautiful. At the frontier of knowledge lies doubt, a doubt that could problematize even faith. Perhaps it is better not to know. In some parts of the world, it is said, happy the unknowing ones. And indeed, if men are in the crepuscular valley of those who know they do not know, as Paul Klee said, and if the gods are on the mountain of those who know, and if the animals are on the mountain of those who do not know, they do not, who do not know, they do not know, then yes, better be animal or God on the blessed mountains. But we are in the crepuscular valley, as Paul Klee calls it, forever trapped between knowing and unknowing. Our museum wants to visualize architecturally this dilemma without arresting hope. Knowledge, for us, to put it simply, is the quest for knowledge. So knowledge is the quest for knowledge. Not an arrogant one, but a light-hearted one, acknowledging the limits of life. Limits we should embrace light-heartedly, not fight. Between stone and the feather of a bird, we try to sing our song, both tragic and beautiful. We dedicate this building to our song, the song of those who know they do not know. That is the song of the human beings. That was it. So I thank you for being here.